All right. Well, the moment that you guys have all been waiting for, you've been listening to JD and I, a couple of buttheads rambling
And
nonsense,
idiots.
idiots, really. We've got one of our very special guests, friend of the show. He has kept us honest a lot of times. He is back like a vertebrae. One BJ Bethel. How you doing, BJ? Thanks for being here.
Back like a vertebrae.
So it's so funny that line. I've been saying that line since like 15. So here's the backstory. When I was like 15 years old, I traded my corn CD. I cannot remember the name of the CD, but it was the one that had Got the Life on it, right? I
Okay.
traded that CD because I was just done with it at the time. I had kind of worn it out. I traded it to my buddy in Missouri. So no, I might have been 16. So I traded to my buddy in Missouri who had Insane Clown Posse, the Great Malenko. I
Oh,
had not
good.
heard Insane Clown Posse before. So we trade CDs, right? And the very first song on that CD and the very first line on that CD was Abracadabra, Boom Shaka Day, I'm Violent J, and I'm back like a vertebrae. And the rest of the CD from there just goes downhill. It's one of the worst goddamn pieces of shit I've ever heard in my life. It stunk. Those guys cannot rap. They're terrible. But for whatever reason, I thought that line was so funny. I've just been saying I'm back like a vertebrae ever since. So anyway, I ruined everybody's night with an ICP reference. How you doing, BJ?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
Good. So you're a bit of a heat magnet right now because you are one of the few people out there reporting the truth. In an era where nobody in our business and nobody in the media space, I hate saying space, but I gotta say it. Nobody out there on this side of pro wrestling is actually wanting to do that, but you're one of the few that are actually truth tellers that we have. So please,
Try my
thank you for
best.
being here, man. But have you been getting a lot of hate tweets and a lot of DMs threatening your life and all that stuff lately?
Yeah. I mean, whatever. They're amateurs.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Normal.
used to challenge people to fights online, and they threatened me, and I'd say, "Hey, what state I'm in. I can come meet you," and that would usually back some of them off. And that wasn't when I was very young and stupid and in much better shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the heat. But when you're reporting on big important stories, that's just kind of naturally comes with it. When you're talking about billionaires and sex trafficking and stories along those lines that involve the federal government and big industry and lots of fans that are passionate and they don't want to have their fandom ruined by outside events. They can react very passionately and sometimes absurdly.
Yeah.
Even some wrestling reporters do this from time to time.
Yeah.
So,
Fantasy is something that people cling to so much because the reality of life is hard, and a lot of people just look for wrestling to be this like fantasy world where you can turn your brain off, and they hate having reality thrown in their face. And the reality is
yeah,
that this business has never been full of good people, right? It's still a fucked up carny place to this day. And
yeah.
the fact that people
I,
choose that ignorance is disturbing. But to continue, man.
it, the just like what you said, I had this talk with some people and specifically about how as things change through the 2010s and social awareness changes and what's acceptable to say and isn't to say publicly changes. I've always said it's going to be very hard to find people in the wrestling business who came of age before the year 2010 that are really good people. It's a very hard thing to do. There's some out there. There's some in the industry now that are great people, but most of them have come along since 2010. And a lot of it's reflected in how people behave and react, and you see that a lot online, especially when you're reporting on big stories. And frankly, I just don't care if they don't like it; they can eat it. I got a job to do, and
Yeah.
this is a 20-year long story for me, and reporting on Vince McMahon and some of the things that's been going on in this company, and frankly, if content creators don't like it, they can go they can go do something else.
Well, fuck themselves. This is this shit. You can say that.
They can eat shit. They can piss up a rope. There's lots of things they can go do. But what they can't do is criticize.
Just get out of the room. Let the adults
yeah.
Like,
Quit. You know what? If you guys want to be,
if this isn't what you signed up for, go find something else. You know, because when stuff happens and bad stuff happens in every industry, and your job, and you decided you're going to have a platform on a YouTube or a channel or a podcast or on Twitter, and you're talking about this stuff, and most of the time it's fun. Guess what? There's going to be times where it's not fun. It doesn't matter if it's NASCAR. It doesn't matter if it's professional sports. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be, I mean, it could be, anything. And this is a very dirty industry. Everybody knows that by now. And if you have a problem with people who are reporting the truth about this industry, then you really have a problem with yourself. You need to take a hard look in the mirror at the job that you're doing, when it comes to, reporting on things and how you're reacting to it, what your relationships are with these people and these companies, and take a hard look at yourself. That's what I think you should do. And if you don't like that, find something else to do.
So let's dig in, man. Mike and I talk often about how stupid we are. So, let's break down the new amended law.
You guys are really smart. Don't say that. You guys are beyond really close to the top as far as the IQ points go, and I think we know that. Everybody,
look where we are.
Your audience knows
look at the space we're in, man.
Yeah.
We're waiting. We play in the kiddie pool, realistically speaking.
Yeah, what was the old saying? It's like being the nicest guy in prison. It's like, thanks.
So let's dig in, man. What's changed with the Janel Grant?
Well, okay, so the Janel Grant complaint was amended on Friday. It came in later in the day. This was the last day that she had her deadline set for her to amend the complaint. So what changed was they basically her law team's looking to kind of show that how she was treated as a commodity by different people within WWE, namely Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, Brock Lesnar, who was named officially in the suit this time. He's not being sued, but his name is mentioned in it. He's not a party to the suit. That should be made clear. Michael P.S. Hayes' name came up basically as somebody that her videos were sent to. There was other details that was added. It was really kind of a very substantial addition to the complaint. It was pretty heavy. Yeah. It was not easy to read. The first edition of the complaint, which was released last year around this time, was very hard to read. It was a hard get through. This one was even harder. Some of the things that were added that was just details, such as her office was had a entranceway for John Laurinaitis. This was something that, according that Nick Khan and Brian Bloom, who've been accused of knowing about when they would design the office, and that's in the amended complaint.
So
now, is that true or not? BJ, I guess we're going to find out.
Let me pause you right there, because I do have a question about that. What was her job at the time that, and you might not know the answer to this question, but I'm just curious, was she John Laurinaitis' secretary at that time, or was she his assistant? And is that why they approved the remodeling?
I know at some point she was going to be promoted to vice president of talent relations, and she would have been second to John.
Right.
But I don't know when the office was being built and it was constructed, or what the timeline was for that matter, or she even ever moved into it. And I don't know what her title was when it was being constructed.
Okay, because for whatever reason, I had it in my head that she was like his secretary or his assistant at the time. And then if she was his assistant, I was like looking at, okay, hold on. I'm glad we got David here. David's in the chat, Bixen Span. He's keeping us honest. He said she was not his assistant. I'm not sure she ever had an official title in talent relations, though. So I guess my thing was, I was trying to make sense of the remodeling of it. Like, hey, we kind of know what happened now, but outside looking in, what would be the professional reason? Like, what would be the official reason? And if she were his assistant, that would kind of make sense. Because I'll be honest, like my commander has a secretary, and they have kind of conjoining offices, and she has like a door that goes to his office, and then he always has to walk through her office to kind of get out to the hallway. So in my head, when I heard that, I was like, well, if that's his assistant or secretary, that would make sense. But as of right now, we don't know what the title was.
Yes,
Okay.
at the time of the office construction, no. I do know they had a job planned for her higher up in
Right.
talent relations at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know if she ever got to assume the role or not. That's something that's on a timeline I'm just gonna have to work out and
Okay.
read through. But they did plan on having an office for her that was like could be accessed by Laurinaitis only, and I guess was pass secured from the outside.
Yeah.
So this was basically what the lawsuit's hinting at, and what's being alleged is that this was used so he could have access to her for
Right.
sexual activities. The other things that were kind of dropped in this was that that office shared a wall with Paul Levesque's office.
Yeah.
But his name's really not brought up much. I think just once or twice, and that it was shared with his wall. Nick Khan supposedly had knowledge of this construction for the office. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I
Well, so
don't think
what I read is that
unless he was like the building manager or something. I don't know. Maybe
he
that fell under his.
what I read was, and I was like, man, unfortunately, like he's like one of those guys. He's like his name just kind of pops up everywhere in every scandal, it seems like, but they never really have anything concrete on the guy, and that's kind of similar here. He just kind of approved the blueprint, but who knows what he even read? So it's kind of like there's not really much there, and that's it's like
Nick's name has been flying around a lot lately.
Yeah,
This wasn't even the only lawsuit. His name was mentioned on Friday.
Yes.
There was this lawsuit filed by a former Fox Sports anchor for FS1 who mentioned that she had been sexually. She's accusing former former Fox Sports executive Charles Dixon of sexual assault, and she mentions Nick Khan in that lawsuit and says that Dixon and another person at the network at the time, whose name I can't recall, they basically wanted her to go to Nick Khan at CAA and get a new agent because they didn't like the current agent she had. And Khan told her that she had to do business. If she wanted to do business with Fox, she was going to have to do business with CAA, which was who Nick Khan worked for before WWE. This is the second time his name's been dropped in one of the Fox sexual harassment lawsuits. The first was the one involving a hairdresser and Skip Bayless. Dixon's name was also dropped in that, and accusations leveled against him. So he's not. Nick Khan has not had a good month or so. His name seems to be popping up with these incidents that happened. Plus, there's Lee Fitting, who is the he's one of the producers of Raw, and I think of WWE programming anyway. And
he's the
scandal. Yeah,
he's like the director of the show. He took over for Kevin Dunn.
Yeah, he got fired from ESPN and ESPN Game Day for sexual harassment reasons. That was a big story in The Athletic a couple months ago.
Yeah,
and he's somebody else that was connected to Nick Khan. Jamie Horowitz was somebody who was let go last year in 2023 by WWE. He was fired from Fox Sports in 2017 for sexual harassment. He was another person that had he was connected with Nick Khan and ended up at WWE because of Nick Khan. He's
kind of connected to a lot of scummy people.
He's connected to a lot of people who have
but there's nothing on him that can stick yet. Him. Yeah, unfortunately there's just nothing on that guy that can stick. He's savvy enough to kind of keep him.
I mean,
but he knows named all these lawsuits, but they don't allege that he's doing anything wrong at this point. But he's just kind of like he's just in that seedy underworld of what's going on in the entertainment business and sports broadcasting.
I mean, sports media is terrible business. Yeah. It's been that way for a long time. I mean, you remember the original ESPN book that came out about 10 years ago about, the first 25 years of the network and the problem women had there. I mean, this is something that's not indifferent to TV news either, unfortunately. To me, I just wonder if at some point TKO gets kind of troubled by the fact that his name keeps getting popped and linked to these different kind of incidents. I don't know if they care about that kind of thing or not there, especially because TKO, those are WME guys.
Yeah.
And Nick Khan, CAA, that's kind of like Coke, Pepsi, Ford, Chevy.
Yeah.
Those are the rivals. But who knows? To me, I think the thing to focus on is, and I think the real scandal could come out of this is just, there's rumors that the Trump Vince's side is saying that the feds have completed their investigation into him and they haven't charged him with anything. Janel Grant's side says that as of last month they were still investigating him. with Trump coming into the White House, a lot of the things at the DOJ and at the court level have been thrown kind of awry. There doesn't seem to be a real will to prosecute people who are rich and powerful. But I think the real scandal here could be, Vince, if these allegations, are coming out and are more public, and you also have Lee Cole talking about Linda McMahon and her stories about her supposedly coming out. You also have the Ring Boy lawsuit out there. It's like, what happens if this doesn't get prosecuted? What happens if this becomes a bigger story? Then this becomes something that could affect the administration.
I
mean, whether the administration
that would be,
cares or
I
not.
think, yeah, I think
know.
that would, I don't see this affecting this administration because I think that
that's a kind of a reach, but at the same time, these big time, I mean, look at the Sean Combs, P. Diddy lawsuit, look at Harvey Weinstein, look at Jeffrey Epstein, rich, powerful people in these positions who are doing things like this. They, a lot of them have been getting busted. And I think anybody that's seen given cover in an instance like this, or maybe not taking it seriously, I think it could be a real political problem for them.
Yeah. I can see that, especially if they just kind of. I think the interesting thing is if because so the federal investigation into Vince McMahon is still ongoing. That has not closed, right? Because there was the SEC one, right? But then there was the other one. You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
The SEC one, there's different thoughts on this. I'm talking to a couple people now who I'm learning more about this as it's going on, and I'm working to find out more. But I will say that I've talked to one person with knowledge of how things work at in Southern District, New York, and they told me it would probably be highly unlikely that they're still investigating Vince. And this is kind of a scoop, I guess, for you guys. It'd be highly unlikely if they were investigating Vince and settled with him as the SEC allegations, and not settle with him on the DOJ investigation, the FBI investigation, and the grand jury.
Right.
But I don't have anything telling me that this stuff's done and that the feds have been done. And when I've called and talked to them, they've told me no comment. I've asked them point blank, have you? I've asked them point blank, are you investigating him or not? And I get a no comment.
Yeah.
Now,
according to Bix,
doesn't mean that they are. They could just not give me a comment.
So according to Bix, who's in the chat, keeping us honest all night. Thank you, Bix. He says CNBC and Meltzer both reported DOJ investigation is dead, with Dave citing sources.
CNBC reported other sources that told him that.
Yeah, but BJ, you're asking for sources on the other side, not the Vince side, on the other side, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have not gotten anything until I hear something definitively from the feds themselves. I can't say if they're still prosecuting him or not. I have not heard that from either. Every time I've asked them, I've gotten a no comment. Now, I think it could be highly likely they're not investigating him based on one, Dave's a great reporter. Two, CNBC's got their stuff together. And three, from people that I talked to, it's been highly unlikely that they would settle with him on the SEC allegations and still have something hanging with the DOJ. Yeah. That's what I've been told. So, to me, that signals to me that they're probably done, but it doesn't. I mean, we'll see what happens. The amendment that came out Friday night was very powerful, and I just cannot sit. I imagine, I don't know, there'd be a lot of political ramifications if something like this were to happen, and this is to get more public, and people weren't to know about it. I mean, the evidence is pretty damning what they had. There was dozens more text messages, including in this. There were selfies of Vince. There was probably the craziest thing was that. And I ended up taking just the text straight from the complaint itself, but there was a portion in the Netflix documentary where apparently you can see Vince on his phone and he's actually talking to Grant when she sent him photos. Which blew my mind.
So they have they have the timestamps of the text, and it correlates to the time that it was actually he was on the show, but we can't see on camera. Like him actually, we can't see the pictures or anything like that. Like nobody.
They show some screenshots in the actual civil suit complaint from the documentary.
And he's like on set at the time, and he's telling her to send him pictures.
They're in a meeting, and this looks like they're shooting B-roll of him in a meeting. Yeah. And it looks like it flips to his phone quickly, and there's something going on in the conversation. And yeah, it was just, it's unbelievably careless. I
Crazy.
sent I sent an email to the Ringer on Friday night asking them about this. If they had a statement or anything, I haven't heard anything back. I'm hoping to hear something tomorrow because Monday, everybody's back to work. But yeah, I just wanted to say, if this made the air, was this something you guys, knew about or snuck in, or just was it an accident? What's going on? So hopefully we'll get
Right.
an answer from that.
And considering his brazen behavior, it's like, did you guys know what he was looking at? Right. I
I
think,
mean, it's no surprise. I mean, to see how Vince has acted, I mean, in his reputation, I mean, to be that brazen would not be surprising at all. I mean, just look at some of the, I mean, look how brazen the company still acts. Look at the Liv Morgan angle last year.
yeah.
It was taken straight from the Grant complaint. Look at past incidents he's had where he's used that as fodder for online, or fodder for on TV stuff. And it's, when you're covering his stuff, you're watching it, and it's just like you kind of have to remember, some people, the audacity level's high here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, this guy thought he was invincible for a long time, and the chickens finally came home to roost. Or at least we'll see if they will, because I'll be honest, like just looking at this and then hearing that the federal investigation is dead, would that give the Grant side less leverage over the Vince and the WWE side if that investigation is dead? Because I
I
think at one point it seemed like she was wanting to push for like there to be some type of charges, right? And then
Oh
maybe
yeah,
on
I
top of it,
think
some type of settlement.
they were deaf. Well, we know that. I don't know whose cases were investigated by the feds.
Okay.
It would be the safe assumption would be Grant, because that fits sex. I mean, that was what the Wall Street Journal reported, was they were investigating for sex assault, rape, and sex trafficking,
Yeah.
and that's the same allegation she makes in her civil complaint. Um, but uh, but I would say that as far as the federal charges go, I mean, I would wait until something's said by the feds. I think Meltzer and CNBC is a good source. I know what I've been told as well, but until I hear something from somebody directly from the government, I'm not gonna, or maybe even from Grant's side, to like, I wouldn't push that too far,
Yeah.
because it's just, these things can also, I mean, grand juries are tricky things. Um, but also, I think it emphasizes just how little that you see, you're going to see Trump and want to push. He's going to, how little he's going to want to prosecute people that are in power. I mean, you've already had Mayor Adams up in New York, Eric Adams. It looks like they're going to drop his indictment. He's a Democrat, but he's a powerful guy in New York. That fits Trump's. That fits who he likes to hang out with. So to me, that's probably kind of the bigger scandal could be happening here, is that, you're having a lot of people that are, because of their pocketbooks, which that's no strange thing to happen in America, people getting off because of their money or getting away with things because of money. But this level of crime, which has been prosecuted lately, especially against Harvey Weinstein and others, and Bill Cosby, it would be a very, very, it would be a big scandal, I think. I think it
Yeah.
would, at least it would get some attention, and it also to ask some questions about the White House. But that's something we'll have to see.
Yeah. I totally agree.
That was the
So
Rumble guy.
yeah, what's that?
No. But I said I was the Rumble guys. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Well, I kind of
but
don't want to talk
anyways,
about. Yeah, I
I'm
kind of don't
sorry.
want to talk about the Rumble anymore.
I know. I just
Yeah.
this sobering stuff. It is.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk. I appreciate you
Well,
guys taking the time to.
Well,
I
it
appreciate
is
you guys taking
difficult
the
to
time to
talk
say.
about, and I think people watching this on video could probably see how uncomfortable JD and I are. But you have to have these uncomfortable conversations because it's important to get the truth out there, and that's why we want to. That's why we like bringing
Well,
you
these
on.
are important issues and important stories, and they need
Yeah.
covered. And I don't think that's happening right now in the greater mainstream media right now, as far as how they view the wrestling business. And it certainly isn't happening within the wrestling business and the wrestling media.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to, tell Stone Cold 420 that I hate to see him lose his press passes to the Rumble, but
Yeah.
I mean, that was the four best questions they had for Paul Levesque last night. I mean, it's a
It,
joke.
Yeah,
And
it's embarrassing. So I just two more questions about the new
sure.
details, and then I want to go on to talk about some more of the media stuff. So one guy that was named that had not been named before is Michael P.S. Hayes. He actually took a hiatus last year at one point, but he is now back. He's back at every show. And they're alleging that he made her send him videos and things like that, like custom material. This is the first time that he's been named in the lawsuit. What do we think happens to him? Are they going to keep him around, or is he going to go on another hiatus? What's going to go on with him?
I think what happened, what they say in the complaint, is that she sent him videos and to other
Yes.
people on the production crew. I don't know what means for him. I guess he was at Rumble this weekend,
Yeah.
working backstage, but I mean, they haven't done any move. They haven't changed anything with fitting. They haven't done anything with Nick Khan, even though his name keeps popping up, kind of
So, but with
perpendicular to some of these incidents. So it's hard to tell. I mean,
yeah.
it would, to me, I wouldn't be surprised if he stays or goes.
Now the one that's actually picking up steam, I think the New York Times covered it, Newsweek covered it, is the Brock Lesnar, because he was the
Yes.
biggest name that most mainstream people would know about, because obviously he was the UFC heavyweight champion, WWE heavyweight champion. He's one of the biggest stars in WWE history. He has been named. Now I did read it, and before he wasn't, they just had a former MMA fighter that's now working there, but now they just said his name altogether. That
Yeah.
it was kind of another similar situation where, not a similar, but they're saying that Vince kind of offered her up as part of his contract. Do we have anything that kind of nails him down that says that he accepted that offer and kind of followed through with Vince's offer there, and kind of with other than just the text messages?
Just the text messages.
Okay.
That's what there's more of them in the complaint. I think there's one message that he requests her to do something in a video or a photo. I don't want to get into the details of it. It
Please
doesn't
don't.
look good for Brock. I'll just say this. I'll be very surprised if Brock Lesnar's back in WWE. I just don't
Okay.
think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
If you get the
he's
meat
probably
and
just like,
potato,
screw
with
this,
some
I'll
of the
just
stuff
stand
that
and handle it.
happened, there's probably more deniability for him before. I think with the amended complaint and some of the additional details, it's not quite as deniable. I don't think he ever interacted with Grant on a personal basis, but I think there was enough things that happened there that they could probably. I don't see why they would want him back.
Yeah.
But he's a draw. Who knows? It's the wrestling business, but at the same time, I don't see why he'd want the headache.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if they did bring him back, they would, their argument would be, well, we don't have any evidence that he ever acted on any of these things.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I
it
think,
doesn't look like he ever even met with Grant. I
well,
don't think. That's
I
at least
think
at
that if
least
they
from
have
what's
that evidence, and they're trying to nail this whole thing down, specifically the company and Vince, or if they're trying to get to the settlement, which I think we all know this is where this is going. It's going to be a settlement, right? And there's probably going to be two different settlements, one for WWE, one for Vince. I'm pretty sure that's where this is going. If they want to up the ante of that settlement, then they need to come with that hard evidence that Brock did follow through with those actions. And then that would make the case even more rock solid, because then that's where the trafficking then comes into play. Like, hey, we have evidence that this person was being trafficked in a contract negotiation, right? And so, and if they don't, I think they still have a ton of evidence that, and TKO is going to want the story to go away, and Vince is going to want the story to go away. I think eventually they're going to have to come to the table, and they'll probably end up settling this deal.
I mean, it's going to end in some kind of civil court proceeding, and that'll usually involves money. Like, what's your injury? And then it becomes, okay, can the court rectify that injury? And what happens to get there? Does it become a settlement? Does it become a trial? I mean, Grant's team is pretty dedicated to pushing all the way to trial.
And she's got a really good lawyer, by the way. She is rock solid.
Her team is very good. They have a multinational firm out of Connecticut. It's also helping them. There's also Eric Holland's firm. Ann Callis has kind of been the mouthpiece as far as her attorneys go. But there's also Eric Holland, who's known as one of the rainmakers. He's somebody who has massive history with settling huge class action suits and taking on the big guy. And it's a very formidable team she has. They also have SKD Knickerbocker. You know, they're helping work with their media. You know, that's ran by people who were working with the Biden. He worked with the Obama administration and Biden when he was vice president. Um, they have a very formidable team. I think whatever is going to happen with this, I still think we're a little bit away from how it's going to play out. I mean, right now the next move will be for the judge to approve the amended complaint. After that, you'll have the other parties, the defendants. That would be WWE, John Laurinaitis, and Vince. They would file their arbitration motions again because they don't want this in court. They want this to be held before a contract arbitrator, which was, according to her NDA, supposedly is what she's bound to do. But I think there's 0% chance of that happening because federal law is the last few years basically prohibits it. It'd be very strange for a judge to allow them to go to the arbitration when, when taking sexist harassment cases to arbitration is pretty much outlawed now. That would be very unusual. So there's still some steps they got to go toward before they, figure out where this is going. I think, and I always think there's always a chance that you're going to see other women come forward. When I interviewed Ann Callis back in November, they were vetting women to talk and potentially join the suit. So maybe that happens at some point. I don't know. Maybe
especially if the judge throws out the NDA because it was signed under coercion, right?
Yeah. And this is another thing. It was, I don't know if this was in the first complaint or not. Maybe Bixen Span's in the chat and he can remember this, but they did mention that they did say that Vince violated the NDA originally because he let knowledge of Grant and the NDA out in the open through a media blogger.
His dumb team released it to Brad Shitbird, and then he put it out there. Dumb Shitbird. Sorry.
Yeah, they don't mention him by name in the complaint, but it's in there that's how it got out.
Yeah.
And I mean, McMahon's also got a history of not paying his NDAs. And he's also got a history of not having them notarized. So there's a whole lot of potential.
I had not heard that one before.
Me neither.
Oh, so yeah. From what I was told, he used to keep a stack of them that McDivitt had filled out, and he would have them in his office and just have people sign them and fill them out, like just hand them out.
Oh my gosh.
Candy. Yeah, that was one story I've been told. Apparently, yeah, that's how many NDAs are floating around.